December 4th, 2025, Washington, D.C. Two presidents in the same room, cameras everywhere, they sign a peace deal. And honestly, for a moment, it felt like something had shifted. Then 7 weeks go by and a drone strike unalives a rebel spokesperson near a small town called Rubaya. And within days, 500,000 people are unpacking whatever they can carry and running. So, if Washington signed for peace, who keeps pulling the trigger and why? Alright, let me walk you through the timeline here, because once you see the sequence, a lot of things start to make sense. July 2025, Qatar's capital, Doha. The DRC and Rwanda sit across from each other and commit in writing to a permanent ceasefire. No one should cross the border. They both decided to pursue a political solution, clean and clear. Then, February 2026 comes around. Another ceasefire. So by this point, analysts in TW are already raising eyebrows. And then within days of that announcement, a drone unalives M23 spokesperson near Rubaya. Ground offensives start back up. Then people start running again. Now, March 15th, 2026, the US, the EU, and a group called the International Contact Group for the Great Lakes put out a joint statement, and they said, and I am going to read this directly, profound concern regarding the continued and recent violations, including the use of drones in military attacks, which also pose an acute risk to civilian populations. Now think about that for a second. The US, the EU, the African Union, all publicly saying the ceasefire is being broken. So why is nobody actually stopping it? Now, there is an old African proverb that says, when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. But here's what I keep thinking about. What if the elephants don't want to stop fighting? So let's start with Kinshasa. President Tshisekedi and the Congolese military, the FARDC, wants sovereignty over the east, control of Goma, and functioning mineral routes. Now that part is fairly straightforward, but here is something that M23 said publicly, and I think it is worth sitting with even if you are skeptical about the source. Don't forget, war is a business for the Kinshasa regime. That's where they steal, that's where they embezzle. That was the M23 coordinator, Corneille Nangaa, speaking to Africa News. Now, is that propaganda? Probably, partly, yes. But here is the thing, both sides have real reasons to keep some version of this conflict going. And that's the part you won't find in the press releases. Player 2, M23. Now, M23. This movement traces its roots to the aftermath of the 1994 Rwandan genocide, specifically the Rwandophone community in Eastern DRC, who argued at one point that they needed protection. That history is real and it matters. Now fast forward to today. What do they actually want? Political recognition, security guarantees for their community. And according to UN investigators, de facto control over chunks of North Kivu that just happen to sit on top of some of the most valuable minerals on the planet. And then there is Rwanda. You see, Kigali's official position has been for a long time that they have nothing to do with M23. But the UN group of experts and multiple Western governments disagree loudly. UN investigators estimated roughly 4,000 Rwandan troops were operating inside DRC alongside M23 forces. The US publicly officially called on Rwanda to stop supporting the M23 and pull back. Now, I want to be fair here. Rwanda's security concerns are not invented. The FDLR, a Hutu extremist militia whose founders participated in the 1994 genocide, still operates inside Eastern DRC. Kigali's fear of that group is legitimate and documented. But there is a second layer. Controlling Eastern DRC's border trade and mineral networks generates enormous, largely untaxed wealth. A destabilized DRC keeps those networks informal and very profitable for whoever can navigate them. The Congolese foreign minister put it plainly to the monde on March 7, 2026. There needs to be a start to the withdrawal of Rwandan troops. Now, I want to give you a number. Just hold it for a second. 5.6 million. That's the number of people that are displaced inside the DRC right now. More than 4 million of them in eastern provinces, the exact areas we have been talking about. And when the latest offensive hit, UN agencies recorded over 500,000 people newly displaced in a matter of weeks. 500,000 people in just one offensive. And here is the part that gets me. For a lot of families in eastern Congo, this isn't the time. Some communities have been pushed out 4, 5, 6 times across different conflicts over 3 decades. Now, they have built lives, lost them, built them, and lost them again. In South Kivu, regional authorities, cited by Al Jazeera, reported over 400 civilians were unalive in certain areas. And surprisingly, this is after the Washington Accords were already signed. US Secretary General Guterres warned of a possible regional conflagration. His exact same words if the violence keeps escalating. So let me ask you something, and I'm genuinely asking, not setting up a rhetorical trap. If this conflict sat on top of an oil field instead of a cobalt deposit, will the international response look the same? Now, quick one for our Patreon members. As always, Patreon members get a curated African news briefing straight into their inbox. The most important developments across the continent, laid out in a way that actually makes sense. If you haven't joined our Patreon or YouTube membership, click the link down below or press the join button right in front of you. Now, back to the video. Let's talk about what the press conferences don't tell you. When there is no functioning state, the minerals don't just sit there, they move. Through rebel checkpoints, smuggling corridors, and contracts that nobody's auditing. Now, armed groups run checkpoints at mining sites and also collect taxes. Regional actors profit from cross-border trade. And somewhere down the supply chain, global companies get cheaper raw materials without asking too many questions about where they came from. Now, here is the uncomfortable truth. A certain level of controlled chaos is actually convenient for multiple actors at once. You see, nobody wants a full-scale regional war, but nobody's rushing to end the low-level one either, because that's where the money lives. Now, the guarantors, the US, the EU, signed the Washington Accords. They issued a statement. The US reportedly slapped visa restrictions on senior Rwandan officials in early March 2026. But still, no sanctions, no real enforcement mechanism with any real teeth. And here is the tension that nobody in a Western press conference will say aloud. The global EV revolution runs on cobalt, and a big chunk of the world's cobalt runs through or right past eastern Congo. So when you hear there is no military solution, that's true. But it also often means there is no solution we are willing to pay for. So let's go where the news almost never goes. Not what did the statement say, but what would actually change this. First, any serious peace deal has to address who controls the mines. The Washington Accords are solid on political language, but they are thin on economics. You can't sign a ceasefire in the morning and have the same armed group collecting mineral rents by the afternoon. It doesn't hold. Second, Rwanda's security concerns have to be taken seriously, not used as a talking point. but genuinely addressed. The FDLR threat is real, but using that as justification for thousands of troops inside a neighboring country is a line the AU, the SADC, and the ICGLR need to hold firm on. Third one, and this is probably the hardest to hear. You see, some communities in Eastern DRC have preferred to live life under the M23 at some point than to live under the Congolese army, simply because M23 was less predatory in day-to-day interactions. That's not a compliment on M23. That's a damning indictment of governance failure, and no external peace deal fixes that. You can build a house of peace on a foundation of signed papers, but if the ground underneath is still made of money, guns, and impunity, don't be surprised when it sinks. Now, here is what I want you to walk away with today. Eastern Congo isn't this complicated because it's somehow uniquely chaotic. It's complicated because for a very long time, too many actors, internally and externally, have found conflict more useful than peace. The ceasefire exists on paper, the real one doesn't. And that gap between the paper and reality has a price. Right now, 5.6 million displaced Congolese people are the ones paying it. So here is my challenge for you. Not subscribe. Something that actually matters more than that. The next time you see a headline that says, ceasefire announced, pause for a second and ask the harder question. Who benefits if it holds, and who benefits if it doesn't? The second question will tell you more about what's coming than any press conference ever could. This is the Strategic Lens. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.